I'm a pussy. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means to me. And that such an amazing group of people can gather in a church of all places. As potentially spiritually connected it may be, and romantically exciting it is to hold an event like this, and a presentation, especially in a church, has always turned out to be complicated, as you noticed, setting up. So thank you for your patience, and thank you so much for being here. It is the absolute culmination and the highlight of this European tour that's going to end here in London today, after I've been through Austria, Germany, Italy, Czech Republic, Spain, Ireland, and now London, UK. So it's been a real journey of planting seeds of consciousness and unity all over Europe. And I'm on my way back to South Africa, where 2 days ago it's been leaked that the elections will be on the 2nd or 3rd of August. So I've got a huge job ahead of me to go back and start campaigning and traveling around South Africa, meeting up with more than 185 candidates that have signed up to represent the Ubuntu Party in these elections. So it's a huge job. And the reason for my trip around Europe was really to, first of all, just expand on the philosophy, the ideas, and the plan ahead for the Ubuntu movement and also the Ubuntu Party in the various countries, to meet the incredible people that have started to resonate with this philosophy and this very simple way ahead for all of humanity, and also to lay the foundation and find the core group of people in each country that will take on the movement in each country. So far we've had a 100% success rate. Wherever we've been, we've had an overwhelming response of people who want to carry on and manage or guide the Ubuntu movement in each country. And that is what I'd like to start off with by saying to you, keep that in mind. If you would like to be involved with the Ubuntu movement in the UK, please make sure that your name is on that email list, and also stay behind afterwards, then we can have a discussion. The problem has been in most of the places that we've had these meetings that 70% of the people have stayed behind, which makes it quite awkward to deal with. So I'm not sure what we're going to do here if that's the same case. But what I will do is send an email out to everyone on the email list and invite you to say, this is what you'd like to do. These are my experiences, these are my skills, this is what I can do for the Ubuntu movement in the UK, so we can get that core group together and start taking it forward. The benefit of the UK is that the Ubuntu Party is already established, it is registered, it is a real entity, it's no longer just a philosophy, it has already been put into action. And for that I have to thank Paul Toussaint, who cannot be with us here today. He's in Stoke-on-Trent and he's sick. He's got a back problem. So Paul, we love you, brother. Thank you for setting up the movement in the UK and doing what you did. Somebody had to work those first hard yards, and he did that. So we can now build on that foundation and keep taking it forward as quickly and as energetically as we can. Then I need to thank a bunch of people, which I always forget to do, and then I'm called heartless and ungrateful, because I get swept away by the moment. And so before I get swept away again, I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in setting this up. Everyone for sending out the emails, for inviting everyone else, yourselves for being here, and then Ray Savage that has shadowed me around Ireland and the UK this time around, as he did 3 years ago with my first visit. The ladies at the door that are helping us, Gillian, Kirsten, and all the beautiful people that are helping us. And Marcus for setting up the sound and coming all the way from far to help us here. Thank you for everyone. And to Najwa and her band, Tom and Thomas, is it? Trevor and Tom, yes. And Najwa, thank you so much for performing your beautiful music. We'll hear more from them, and offering to come and share your talents with us. After all, the Ubuntu movement is all about the expression of our own independent artistic abilities, and that's where we should be moving towards, as I hope you will realize by the time we finished here today. But what I decided to do here today is what I did in Spain just a few days ago, and it turned out to be really, really work really well, because some of you may not be familiar of the path that brought us here and the research in my own personal capacity that brought me to this realization and to starting the Ubuntu movement starting talk about this some 11 years ago. So this has been an 11-year journey for me that brings us to this moment right here, right now, sharing this philosophy. But what led up to that is really fascinating information, which I hope to share with you now. Take you through this very concise and compacted presentation of ancient human history, civilizations, ancient vanished civilizations of Southern Africa, so you can see the unfolding of how this comes to be. The great human puzzle, most of us have wondered, who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here? And yet we are still stuck for answers on this deeply spiritual question, seeking for the meaning of life. Although many movies have been made about that, we're still struggling with the answers to these very simple questions. More than 500 years ago, the Portuguese explorers came around the Cape of Good Hope, or the Cape of Storms, on the way to the east, and they found an amazing bit of information. They found ancient stone ruins in southern Africa, and when they asked the people that lived there at the time, where do these come from, who built them, they were told, we don't know. We don't know who built these. And yet our modern historians claim they know exactly who built them, when they built them, how they built them, and all this kind of nonsense gets put into our history books. The fact that many of these ruins have no doors and entrances, which remains one of the major puzzles in this mystery, is a clear indication that we're dealing with something very special and very unique. They are often called cattle kraal, of little historic value, and you'll realize that these original structures have nothing to do with dwellings for humans or animals. Just to show you what some of these look like, and this is why I was worried about the light, because hopefully you can at least see something. There are many of these stone structures. Some are simple, some are very complicated. And like I mentioned, there are several studies that have been done since 1939 that clearly show and state from various university groups and archaeological groups that tell us that the original structures had no doors and entrances. Yes, there are many that have been found that have got doors and entrances that have been made in them, but that is just a recent modification of what was previously something very, very different. You'll notice that some of them are very unique structures and shapes, and each one is completely and utterly unique. No two stone circles are the same. As I mentioned, no doors and entrances. What you're looking at is the largest and most mysterious ancient stone settlement on Earth. It covers way more than 450,000 square kilometers at the southern tip of Africa, South Africa and Zimbabwe mostly, and it goes even further north and expands into Botswana and Mozambique at the same time. Agricultural terraces that cover thousands of square kilometers for crops and livestock to feed how many people? That's the question. Because all our history books tell us that Southern Africa was a sparsely populated part of the world, that nobody lived here in ancient times. And yet we've got thousands and thousands, actually more, of these stone structures that go way beyond what seems to be the first settlement of people in Southern Africa. And therein lies the deep mystery. The terraces cover large parts and mountains all over the place. And I must just get away in front of that speaker. It's going to feedback. I can feel it. It's about to feedback. And the moment you start looking around, unfortunately, you can't see that very well. This is a great pity here. Entire mountains are covered in terraces and stone structures, all connected to each other by what look like roads or passages. That's too much. Just make sure there's no reverb on it. All reverb is completely dead. Okay. That there are no. That's better. That there are no. That these look like channels and roads and passages, and that's not what they are. They actually connectors that connect all these stone circles together. None of these stone circles stand alone. This is the most important thing to realize, that they once were all connected by these channels. Can you see at least any of that? Yes. Okay. And then on the left there, it's just such a pity that this lighting in this church is really so bad. The guy that designed the lighting here. Yeah. And this was really the great mystery. So many stone circles and all connected by these channels that look like wires connecting them together, no doors and entrances. Clearly we're dealing with something far more mysterious than just dwellings for animals and cows and humans. And that's exactly what they are, something far more mysterious. And at the heart and at the center of them all is this beautiful site called Adam's Calendar. Well, I gave it the name Adam's Calendar when I first came face to face with it in 2007. Until then, it was only known by Johann Heine, who discovered it or rediscovered it in around 2003. It's about to feed back. 2003, and then I started working on it and called it Adam's Calendar because I realized it was probably somehow connected to the origins of humankind. And that's exactly what it is. I didn't realize how close to the truth I was, because when I met Baba Credo Mutwa a year later, he told me that he was initiated there in 1937 as a young shaman, and that it is a well-known place by ancient African knowledge keepers, and that they call it Inzalo Yelanga, or birthplace of the sun, where humanity was created by the gods. And it wasn't just any kind of god, it was a specific god by the name of Enkai in African mythology. And Enkai is the same entity as we read about in the Sumerian texts, called Enki. Can you hear me? Okay, good. And we suddenly see a very clear connection between the Sumerian history and history of Southern Africa, and that's when it starts to get really exciting. Very difficult to see it in this light. It is a very badly destroyed site. Here's a 3D reconstruction of it. We've got a north, south, east, west alignment with the cardinal points. We have 3 stones that line up with the rise of Orion. We have a Horus stone that marks the rise of the sun in the east, and we have pyramids in the distance that line up with in the valley, the Barberton impact crater, that line up with the rise of Orion in the east. Over those 3 stones, the 3 Orion belt stones. So it's a deeply mysterious site. It is directly connected on the 31 degrees east longitudinal line with Great Zimbabwe, and if you carry on going north, you end up right up in the Great Pyramid of Giza. So it's all aligned along that line, and that just deepens the mystery and makes us realize we're dealing with something much, much older than we realize. At this stage, the age of the site is estimated by me to be about 285,000 years. 285,000 years. That is not a small number. Very, very different and way out of the paradigm of most historians and archaeologists today. But you realize that what we think we know about our history is very, very different. In fact, by the time we finish this, you might as well throw all your history books away, because we've got to start from scratch. Because by now, I'm sure most of you are aware of the fact that pretty much everything we've been told is a lie, and we have to re-educate and re-inform ourselves as to what's really going on in the world. And I guess that's why most of us are here. That's exactly why I am here. Because many years ago, when I first heard that expression, everything we've been told is a lie, I went, oh, you got to be kidding. I know when somebody is lying to me. And arrogantly, I believed that I could discern the liars from the truth tellers. Little did I know how naive I was. Archaeological drawings from 1939 in South Africa tell us the no doors and entrances and how they were all connected to each other, these little circular structures. And some of them are not just one wall, but sometimes they are concentric walls that have no doors and entrances. And you realize we're dealing with something far more mysterious. How many of these stone circles are there? Well, in 1891, Theodore Bent, who was a British explorer who wrote some phenomenal literature on the vanished civilizations of Southern Africa, left us incredible clues, but Theodore Bent's information has been shoved under the carpet because it's really incriminating about ancient advanced civilizations. So Theodore Bent at that stage already estimated about 4,000 of these structures. This is the inside of Great Zimbabwe, by the way, with its big conical tower. And conical tower is very important here. It's a giant cone facing the sky. For those that don't know my research yet, that is very, very significant. By 1974, Roger Summers, who was the head of the antiquities at that stage, estimated about 20,000 of these stone structures all over southern Africa, and that's when I discovered this information in the sort of around 2004, 2003, and I got very excited and I realized, wow, I live in the real land of Indiana Jones. I'm surrounded by thousands of ancient ruins. Little did I know that I was going to get completely sucked into it a few years later when I met Jan Heine. By 2007, I estimated there were at least 100,000 of these, and so did Revel Mason, who was the retired head of Wits University Department of Archaeology, who told me on the phone that there were at least 100,000 of these. And when I asked him, Revel, but this poses a big problem, because in a sparsely populated part of the world, even because at that stage I still thought we were dealing with dwellings for people and cows, right? Lots of cows, obviously. I don't know who these cows belong to, but there must have been a lot of cows, and they obviously needed somewhere to stay. Just out open wasn't good enough for the cows, you know. So when you start going through it, you realize how ridiculous it is, you know. And so I told Revel on the phone, I said, Revel, this poses a big problem, because if we ascribe, say, 10 people per stone structure, 100,000 stone structure, we're dealing with 1 million people that lived here in southern Africa a long, long time ago. Yet all our history books tell us nobody lived here. And he went, well, then there can't be 100,000 ruins. Can you see what happens there? Academics, they go straight back to the textbooks. Well, the book says there was nobody living here. Well, the evidence says that there are 100,000 stone structures. Oh, but can't be. Must be a figment of our imagination. Anyway, so I started counting these, and you won't be able to see any of these because some of these are very faint. But I used aerial pictures and Google Earth and a lot of material that I had access to, and I got averages per square kilometer, per hectare, per smaller area, and I came up with about 3.26, if I recall, stone circles per hectare. Then what I did, I extrapolated it over the entire area that I've seen and I know that exist, and some of them are 100 by 100 kilometers. And you do the numbers yourself, you realize what happens. And there's not just one of these areas that's 100 by 100 kilometers, there are several of them. These giant clusters of these stone circles. And I came to the shocking realization that we're dealing with more than 10 million stone ruins scattered around southern Africa. And at that moment you realize we're facing, for the first time ever, a vanished civilization that nobody knows about, that nothing has been written about other than stuff that I've been sharing, and that has just been poo-pooed and shoved under the carpet because it is very dangerous for Eurocentric historians and archaeology. And this is what is becoming very important because it's now playing a central role in what we're here about the enslavement of the human race, about the abuse of humanity right across our planet, and we are finding the foundations of this and the origins of this in southern Africa. This is why I am on this path, because we've stumbled upon the beginnings of our enslavement as a species. What is this all about? It's always about the gold. Okay, don't kid yourself. Our presence on this planet cannot be separated from our obsession with gold. But keep reminding yourself that it's not our obsession with gold. That obsession has been imposed on us by those who came seeking the gold. And that in itself is a whole nother story. And many people are still oblivious or uninformed about why the gold, what the gold is all about. So if you're still one of those that doesn't know about the gold, it's okay. But from this moment, you're going to start doing your own research and discover a whole new amazing world of alchemy, chemistry, the different states of matter, and realize that there's another world that we've never been told about, because everything we've been told is a lie. And you'll discover the different orbital arrangements of gold and monoatomic gold and the white powder of gold and the elixir of the gods and so forth and so forth. And that rabbit hole never ends. That is our connection as a species to gold. We didn't start it. We were pushed right into the center of it. We became the slaves for the gods in the gold mines. This is what all ancient civilizations tell us, and I should have mentioned it a little earlier. No matter where you go and you talk to the knowledge keepers of ancient civilizations and the knowledge, they all tell you the same thing. that we were created as slaves for the gods to work as slaves in the gold mines, specifically in southern Africa. And Inzalo Yalanga in Adam's calendar is one of the central points to that. So thousands of ancient gold mines scattered throughout southern Africa, and I mean thousands. Wherever there are gold mines or stone circles, there are gold mines. And these are just some pictures of more modern recent gold mines that have been reopened in the South African gold rush in the 1800s, and I visited dozens of them. In the area of Lydenburg, the town where some of that is famous for these Lydenburg heads. Oh my God, you can't see anything. The Lydenburg heads are famous for being discovered in the town of Lydenburg. There are more than 75,000 of these added gold mines have been discovered or found in a geological survey between 2005 and 2010. And mysterious mine tunnels and mine shafts have been discovered right across southern Africa from the 30s all the way through, that had mysterious tools and artifacts removed from them that were just removed by the mining authorities in those days. And in the 1990s, De Beers admitted to finding a 22,000 feet deep mine shaft cut with absolute precision that indicated some sort of laser technology. Anglo-American has a secret file that covers up many, many ancient mines. And the reason I know this, because I was told this by the chief geologist for Anglo-American over a beer at a pub. And he even gave me his card. It's amazing what people volunteer when you talk to them in a pub. The miracle of beer, yes. Loosens the tongue, gives away secrets. Just as recently as 2014, December 2014, a friend of mine told me that, that he was working in a mine, and one of the shafts, one of the passages just suddenly caved in, a modern mine, and opened up a huge underground shaft or a passage that nobody knew about. So it was very quickly closed off, shut down that side of the mine. Everyone was evacuated. No one is ever allowed to go back in there. And that whole section of the mine was closed up. Instead of getting excited saying, wow, we discovered something interesting here, no, they shut it down, and no one is supposed to know about this. And just before I left South Africa, there was a huge media leak that disappeared, that in the town of Carltonville, which I'm going to talk about now, a huge sinkhole appeared, and a huge underground, they described it as an infinite underground open cave that you can't see the edges of it. It was opened up, and it was just leaked once, and then never again. All media just stopped talking about it, and I understand why. I'm going to come back to that. In northeast Zimbabwe, there are thousands of these Nyanga pits, or these what are known as slave pits, or grain pits, or animal pits. Again, it's got to be slaves, animals, or food, or dwellings, right? Well, we need a plug. It comes back to energy. We're going to talk a lot more about that. Electricity, the tool of unification. Thanks, Marcus. Anne Kritzinger is a geologist at Zimbabwe University who published many papers on these slave pits, because she found that they must have been used as some sort of processing tanks or processing places for the extraction of gold. She found that they have inlet valves and outlet valves, and in the outlet valves she found up to 2 grams per ton of gold sediment. That's not going to happen unless you're processing gold in there. So these are very simple conclusions that we can reach. And then in an incident I just mentioned, in a sinkhole in Carltonville, the same town, I grew up very close to those towns, the gold mining towns. I grew up in a town called Western Area, about 50 kilometers from Carltonville. And around 1975, a sinkhole appeared, and a bunch of guys went down the site to test their mining equipment. When they got down to the bottom, they found one of the sides caved in. They opened it up and walked into it, and they found a tunnel that looked something like this. a paved tunnel all the way around that they were completely stunned by. They walked into the tunnel, and several meters into the darkness, they stumbled upon one of these. This is how it was described to me. A statue what resembles Viracocha, one of these South American pre-Inca civilization statues, always connected to gold and the mining of gold. So, and this was actually told me by Raymond Dix's father, who died 6 months later, who for 2 years was trying to talk to me and to tell me something, and eventually I was, Raymond Dix was my legal advisor, our legal advisor with our actions against the banks in South Africa. And this was his father, who worked in the mines in the 70s in the mine rescue teams, and they were testing their equipment. And he said he never told anyone until he told me, because he just thought they would think he's nuts. And then 6 months later he died, so at least we carry that story. What this all points to, people, is that our history is much older, much stranger, and much more exciting than we could ever have imagined. I mean, any Harry Potter movie, any science fiction movie we've ever seen is probably pales into insignificance based on what really happened here on this planet, what's been happening here for hundreds of thousands and millions of years, because that's how old this stuff is. Stonehenge is one of the greatest examples about deception, about dating ancient sites. Now, anyone who's been to Stonehenge will know what I'm referring to if you understand geology. This stone in the middle here, there are two tall stones. One of them has fallen over and it broke. The other one is still standing up with a little nipple on top. They used to be connected on top. And remember that Stonehenge was reconstructed in 1954. Many people are not aware of this. It was completely reconstructed so that it looks a lot more recent. It's not as ancient as it really is. So what we see Stonehenge today is a reconstruction. It's not how it was found. And you realize that when you look at the erosion, you can't see it again. This is the one, there's the tall one there, the one next to it fell over and it broke. There's the break. Now, a clean break on a stone that's a few thousand years old will be a clean break. Well, we got about 3 feet of erosion on that Saracen stone. 3 feet of erosion on Saracen stone is not going to happen in a few thousand years, people. Come on. Any geologist here will tell you we're dealing with something that is hundreds of thousands, probably millions of years of erosion. So the geology is telling us the truth, but the other people, the historians, the archaeologists, will keep lying to us. They'll make stuff up. And just because you find pottery or you find leftover food or anything like that, proof of habitation does not mean proof of construction. Did you build the house you live in? No. If you leave your crap behind, can people assume that you built that house? No. So stop making the same assumptions about ancient civilizations. And what becomes evident, because of these ancient civilizations are far more advanced than we could imagine, and they use technology that we're only rediscovering now with these discoveries, they did not have to leave behind any crap, because they didn't use money. They didn't sell anything to each other. They didn't have fast food takeaway and discard everything they used. And everything starts to fall into place. It is quite spectacular when these things start to crystallize in our minds. What is this all about? We have to go to the very beginning. Sound and resonance. You realize that sound and resonance are the common links to all religions and all creations. After all, it was God who said, "Let there be light." It was the sound of the Creator that brought forth everything in reality, in our existence, in our creation. It is the sound that manifests and creates the nature of reality that surrounds us. In Christianity, it's the word. Hinduism, it's the The Egyptians believed the universe was sung into creation, and the Aboriginal people, or the original people, not the aboriginal, the original people of Australia, tell us that the university and the world was brought forth with sacred songs, with 3 sacred songs. And the Hindu creation story tells us that that everything was so peaceful and silent that Vishnu slept undisturbed by dreams or motion. From the depths, a humming sound began to tremble. Our best impression of a didge. It grew and spread, filling the emptiness and throbbing with energy. The night had ended. Vishnu awoke. It's just a dramatic way of saying God said, "Let there be light." And you start realizing it's all the same story. But now we've got to ask ourselves, what is sound? What is this thing called sound, the sound of the Creator that brought everything into creation? And we realize how little we know about sound and resonance, and how ignorant we are about this. And this became my passion. So I went and looked into it and realized that this is the fundamental aspect of everything that we know. We have embraced in our reality. Sound is the breath of the Creator. And once you realize this, you can also very easily explain why sound can do the following. It levitates, it can boil water, it creates light, it creates DNA. Sound heals and destroys pathogens. It can cure all disease. Sound moves beyond the speed of light. This is one of the best kept secrets in science, people. And sound can turn into this thing called hypersound, and we can use sound in the form of SASER beams and SASER technology as opposed to laser beams. Sound can make things invisible. Sound energizes the water we drink and the air we breathe, without which the air would be useless and the water would still not sustain us. And sound is a precursor to electromagnetism. And these are just a fraction, tiny, small amount of things that sound does. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you this, but you can go and look all the find this out for yourself very quickly. Just Google this on YouTube, and you'll see, put sound on a metal plate, and you'll see these incredible structures that are being formed. I don't know, maybe it will work, but no. And you'll see that every sound frequency has a very specific shape. Very specific shape. The higher the frequency, the more complex the shapes. The lower the frequency, the larger and simpler the shapes. And you start realizing the connection between manifestation into physical form and how sound brings forth the manifestation of physical form, just by looking at this. If you go look up Erik Larson or the cymoscope, and you can see how our human voice manifests an infinite number of sound, of shapes. This is what makes us co-creators, is the fact that we can create these infinite shapes with our sound, and why chanting is such an important part of human history, and why monks do certain things in monasteries, and why monasteries are built in certain ways, and churches, exactly. It's always about the sound and the acoustics. It's the sound and the resonance. And our human voice not only gives away the secrets of manifestation of sound into physical form, but it also then gives away the secrets that have been hidden by our churches and our religious movements when they encode the symbols of religion, like the cross, in Christianity and so forth. Because this is a cymatic shape of what happens to sound at a very core base. A perfect cross in a circle. And suddenly you realize, when you see all the images or the logos and the symbols created by religions, that they knew what they were doing. It wasn't not an accident when they make a cross in a circle represent the creation. They understand that it comes from sound. And these secret organizations and societies of the past. Even the medicine wheel of the Native Americans is just a cross in a circle that tells us sound can cure all disease. The medicine wheel. The ankh was used for healing. It is a resonator. It's a tuning fork. It can create certain frequencies that can cure disease. And the Ark of the Covenant is a great example how sound and resonance was used as a tool and a weapon, because it brought down the walls of Jericho. With the blast of a trumpet and a shout, the walls came tumbling down. And you start seeing how resonance and sound is encoded in all of our history. John Keeley in 1888 was already levitating and resonating things with his musical Dynasphere. John Keeley was doing so many incredible things, and I also suspect that he was the great inspirer or inspiration for Nikola Tesla some years later. Sound levitates. Again, you can go onto YouTube, see many examples how sound levitates things. Once you see that, it unplugs a block that we have, because most of us can't imagine it. When you see it for yourself, it really helps to realize what sound does. Peter Davey in New Zealand since 1940 was boiling water with sound, and that unfortunately went to the grave with him as a secret. Sound creates light. Royal Raymond Rife in 1931 was declared the man who cured all disease all was sound and resonance, and very quickly was removed, and all his information was removed by the Medical Association of America. And, but I found his book, this book that I found in Sedona, Arizona, in a library, well preserved, and it is his handwritten book of hundreds and hundreds of pages of all the frequencies that actually show you how he cured all disease. What frequencies? And these are just 3 pages. This one is for, I can't see this now here. It tells you what disease it's for and exactly what frequencies to use to cure that disease. This is diphtheria. Oh, those first ones were the cancers, different cancers. This is all for different cancers, yeah. Lipoma, mycoma, all kinds of cancers, and this is for tuberculosis, and there are hundreds of pages with these handwritten inserts. So all this stuff exists, but unfortunately this gets removed from our reality. In 2011, a musical professor from Skidmore College, United States, showed on a TED Talk. This is how recent it is, in 2011, and I normally show this in my longer presentations. He shows on a TED Talk how sound frequencies between 100,000 and 300,000 hertz kill cancer cells. You actually see them do this in the lab that they did at the university. It kills cancer cells while leaving all the other cells completely intact, very happy, swimming around, doing its own thing. So we can cure cancer, and he probably thought in 2011 when he did the TED Talk that this would become, be taken up by the medical industry and so forth, and he'd become a hero. Little did he know that he walked into the lion's den, and he was just simply devoured by the pharmaceutical industry. Not another word has been heard about that. So when we talk about the cure for all disease and the withholding of cure of disease from the human race, we need to realize that this is a crime against all of humanity. And this is what we need to stop, and this is what we need to change and reverse, and that's really what the Ubuntu movement is all about. But I had to personally go through this research to realize these things, as many of you have already. That is why you're here. So this is what we're undoing. The magnetron is a well-recognized shape for those that work in the field of electricity and electronics. A magnetron creates huge amounts of energy. It's a tiny little magnetron that you find magnetrons in laser beams and microwaves. And it's a resonant cavity magnetron. Resonance, sound, acoustics, once again, that can create huge amounts of energy. Sound makes things invisible. This is from 5th of August 2014. And then they created this weird-looking pyramid. And when they exposed it to certain sound frequencies, everything you put underneath it becomes invisible. So now imagine monks in a monastery chanting. Do you think that is the reason why they built monasteries in certain ways? When you get people in there, they chant. Does it at some frequency, make the entire building invisible? If we can do it here, we could possibly do it here. Is that a good way of non-confrontational, removing yourself from marauding armies? They just march right past you. There's nothing here. Let's carry on. And then sound energizes the air we breathe. At medical school, I spent 5 years at medical school studying pharmaceutics. And you study the whole breathing and oxygen and blood platelets and this and that, but never do we actually get told what about the oxygen is it that actually feeds us. Until I realized, it's the sound of the air we breathe that keeps speeding up, and by the time the sound reaches your alveoli, it's moving beyond the speed of light. And the sound is the thing that energizes the oxygen that then gets transferred into your bloodstream. And it's the oxygen that gets stripped of the energy, and you breathe it out in the form of carbon dioxide or monoxide, depending on how sick you are. So in 2011, Luc Montagnier did a most incredible thing when he manifested out of nothing DNA by exposing a tube of DNA to a certain sound frequency and transferring that sound frequency into another empty tube of DNA. Think about what DNA is, people. It is everything that makes up the entire coding for your entire body, for the thoughts that you're able to manifest and string together. It is everything that makes up your humanness. And you can manifest this with sound. Now you can start imagining how important this thing called sound is and resonance in our reality. And this just gets more and more exciting as you work with sound. We're just really touching upon the subject here. because it is grossly misunderstood by most people. In 2005, and 2 years later, it was reported in the American Institute of Physics that 3 undergraduates and 2 high school students moved sound beyond the speed of light at the Tennessee State University. It was reported and very quickly buried. It's spectacular how this kind of scientific breakthrough just gets removed. Curing of cancer, moving sound beyond light, speed of light, all these things. And it's happened at this institution here in 2005. Sound, in this case, we're starting to realize, is the ultimate source of free energy, because it is a thing that's responsible for everything manifesting out of that nothingness. And in there lies the secret, actually. I really don't want to digress too much. I get so excited to go down that road because it's so exciting. It really opens our minds. But you know, Nassim Haramein has proven beyond any doubt with his research that the density of the vacuum is infinite. So in there actually lies our ability to understand how sound and resonance can move beyond the speed of light. In fact, it is infinite. To explain it in our reality here, remember, the denser the medium, the slower the speed of light. Right? If you put light through a prism, it slows it down, it breaks it down into the different colors. So if you put light through a boson-Einstein concentrate, it slows light down to about the speed of a bicycle. But when you put sound through a dense medium like water, it travels a lot faster. So if you have an infinite density and you put sound into it, what happens? It moves infinitely fast. That's it. That's why everything in the ether is connected instantly, because the density of the vacuum or the ether is infinite. So this is why sound and resonance is the connector of everything. And we can start understanding how our thoughts can reach everyone and anywhere in the universe at the same time. Everything in creation can be affected by our thoughts because we've just created energy and we've put it into physical form, into a frequency and resonance out of nothing. We just make it up. It's amazing. Nikola Tesla used the earth as a resonator, and that's why he could create his radiant, subtle energy. He did not use electricity, he used subtle energy. And he told us that the earth rings like a bell. And this is why that energy could be used all over the world, but we know what happened to him. What does this all have to do with ancient civilizations? Everything, because they understood this thing called sound and they used it for everything they did. And this is where I started finding these mysterious cone-shaped tools that first puzzled me. But I started finding them everywhere around the stone circles of southern Africa. And I realized that they were not exclusive to the ruins of southern Africa. That these cone-shaped tools that have been, until I started talking about them, they were completely ignored by all historians, all archaeologists, anyone that has studied human history just did not pay any attention to these. And yet these are the most prominent features all over the world. And this is why I called it the ice cream cone phenomenon. And Ed Leach Scullin in southern Florida in the 1920s built what is known as Coral Castle single-handedly with cone-shaped tools. He was reported to be holding ice cream cones in his hands while he was levitating these giant, many ton coral blocks of coral. Apparently, the largest stone in Coral Castle is 90 tons. But, yeah, it's just not going to happen if you don't have advanced technology. If you don't know what Coral Castle looks like, there's just some pictures. Yeah, that's a revolving door that he did single-handedly. You know, you push it and it just keeps turning. You know, you don't do this on your own unless you've got some seriously advanced technology. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to build anything or try to move rocks out in the field or on the mountains. I have. You know, anything more than 50, 60 kilos becomes a huge problem for one or even two people. And this is cone-shaped tools in ancient mines in England. Cone-shaped tools in Egypt. Dozens on display. Everyone's been ignoring them. No one pays any attention to them. More cone-shaped tools in Egypt to do with funerary passage called true of voice. Something to do with sound. Voice. Australia. Cone-shaped tools in Australia. Look how happy I am. Cone-shaped hats, golden hats used in special ceremonies in cultures, ancient cultures all over the world when they do inaugurations of priests and kings. Cone-shaped hats? What's going on here? Why do wizards have cone-shaped hats, and why are wizards' wands cone-shaped, and why are the crystals or the stones at the front of their wands cone-shaped? And all this suddenly starts to fall into place. This Mayan deity holding two cone-shaped tools while he's doing something. And these cone-shaped tools found in the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose, California, that come from Sumeria, and they have inscribed on them in cuneiform text that's been translated. They celebrate the building of the temples in Sumer. One of them specifically refers to the building of the temple of Inanna. And you go, cone-shaped tools. It's something to do with building and levitation and construction and SASER beams, because that's exactly what we've got. And what have we got in our eyes that works with light? Rods and cones. Our eyes are connected through the optic nerve to our pineal gland. Can you imagine if our pineal gland was not polluted by fluoride and all the other crap that's been put into our food? How brilliant we could be. Because once you activate that pineal gland, which is just another eye, remember it looks just like the eye, filled with rods and cones, and your eye, rods and cones, these cones in your eye should all be able to give us supernatural ability. If you think it, you can be able to project it and manifest it. And this is what we start realizing has been removed from our ability as living, breathing human beings of infinite soul and flesh and blood. And then we realize that there's very clear images show us that humanity has been taken control of by these weird-looking beings, these bird-headed beings and winged beings and all these guys doing weird things to people in ancient times with cone-shaped tools that look like pine cones, suggesting they were doing something to our pineal gland. And if you look at what this guy's got on his wrist here, it looks like a wristwatch. It's got 12 cones facing the middle. If you cut those 12 cones in half, you'll see how that control with sound and frequency, how that manipulation from ancient times translates into manipulation in modern times. And this is, we realize that the pineal gland is just a frequency receiver and a transmitter, and it was made to be the all-seeing eye, and just remind us how these things are hidden in plain sight. And it seems that they were controlling our pineal gland and our DNA, or the tree of life, with these cone-shaped tools. And when you look at that weird wristwatch that one being had on his hand, the continuation of manipulation of humanity goes on today. There's your all-seeing eye of Horus, and the half of that weird wristwatch that he had with the 12 cones facing the middle on the NBC logo. You see, the manipulation with frequency carries on and on into our lives today, and we are completely oblivious of this because it's just so well hidden. And we've been removed from our ancestors, we've been removed from this knowledge, we've been turned into a species with amnesia. We've got no idea who we are, where we come from and why we're here, and this is why we're so easily manipulated. But those days are over. That's the best part of this. So this is just revision, just reminding us of, wow, this is great, we've busted you. Some ancient texts are misinterpreted, others are simply ignored, and this really goes into some very fascinating decoding of the opening phrase of the Bible that actually doesn't say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, but it actually says the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. If you watch one of my presentations online, I go into more detail about that. And that first line of the Bible is a complete deception, and that is why so many of us are confused. This is where we meet the Sumerian tablets, and we meet the Anuna gods, and we cannot escape this. This is a historic reality. You can jump up and down, get angry, get red in the face, scream and shout. It's not going to go away. We have to face this reality. We have to face this, what I call the terrible truth. Once we get through the denial and the anger and the whatever we go through emotionally, we can then say, okay, what are we going to do about this? And that, I believe, is why we're all here today. What are we going to do about this? I just want to remind you that all of this is just revision. It's just good to know. It makes us feel better about ourselves because it gives us a deeper understanding of why we're in this mess. But what really matters is, what are we going to do about this from this day forward? We cannot continue the way it's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And we meet Anu, Enlil, and Enki, this apparently holy trinity of the Anunnaki, these Anuna gods, and we meet the work in the Abzu and this character called Enki. Remember, this Enki is known as Enkai in Zulu tradition, the creator of the human race, to be slaves in the gold mines. This is the same Enki that we meet in the Sumerian texts. And this is one of the translations that you find in the Abzu. Enki plans was conceiving where to build his house, where for heroes dwellings to prepare, where the bowels of the earth to enter, to mine the gold. And we meet Enki's mines and technology. The earth splitter Enki there established, there within the earth a gash to make, by way of tunnels earth's innards to reach, the golden veins to uncover. And this is just a small fragment of what's been going on. Let us create a Lulu, a primitive worker, the hardship work to take over. Let the being, the toil of the Anunnaki carry on its back. And this is where we get to the, we can carry on and on and on. It's just, let's get back to why we talking about sound and resonance. And I started finding these weird shaped stones, these elongated stones that ring like bells. And again, go onto the YouTube and look at this video where you can see these stones ringing beautifully, and each one very specific frequency. And we realize that we're dealing with quartz, silicon-based technology, people. Quartz has memory, silica has memory. It conducts light and sound. This is the most advanced technology we have. All our technology is silicon and quartz-based technology, all to do with light and sound. We can store trillions of data, trillions of terabytes of data in crystals. Memory data, yeah, in crystals. But are they using that in technology? No, of course not. It's not good for business. So that's not going to happen. But we now know it. So when you see Superman flying to some weird place and manipulating crystals around, it's real. This is really advanced technology. And this is why you realize the ancient cultures built everything out of stone, because they used the crystalline structure of the stone as advanced technology. And all ancient structures are actually giant memory banks containing huge amounts of information, because pretty much all stone on earth contains quartz and silica and crystalline structure, especially the granites and especially the stones that make up all the ancient structures like the pyramids and so forth. Sandstone is pretty much, crystals, crystalline structure. So we realize that all these ancient structures are giant machines, all working with sound and resonance, all activated by light and sound. And this is why the passages are aligned with the movement of the sun. At a specific time of the year, on the equinox or on the solstice, the sun comes down this passage and at sunrise, and it hits the standing stone here, which is what? It's a giant crystal. It's full of crystalline matter. And it activates the machine from the frequency of the light and the frequency of the sound in that light, activates the machine by hitting this standing stone. And the machine starts to do something, because it picks up those frequencies, whatever that thing is that the machine is supposed to do. And then when the sun comes up on the equinox, it makes the machine do something else. When it comes up on the winter solstice, it comes in and makes the machine do something else. And that's why also the stars and the sunlight and the moonlight is aligned with the machine, because we might think that the stars are faint, they're just flickering little stars, but that light and the sound associated with that light is very, very powerful. And it activates these ancient machines. And you realize that they're still active today. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to photograph things like this that come out of the pyramid. It's still resonating and giving us frequencies that we can't understand. And this brings me back to the stone circles of South Africa, each one being completely unique. If you study cymatics, and this is a cymatic pattern, this one I think represents the vowel A, and you realize that that's exactly what these stone circles are. Each one is a cymatic pattern, representation of the subtle frequencies in the earth at that specific point. And we realize that we're dealing with a giant energetic structure, a giant energy grid which is still active today. More than 10 million of these stone structures, each one representing a sound frequency. The stones in the walls that make it up begin to resonate, and they amplify those sound frequencies, and they're all connected to each other by these channels that connect them to each other. So we're dealing with a huge energy grid, and we know this because we measured it. Some of these stone circles are shaped in the form of magnetrons. Now, if a little magnetron this size can create enough energy to create a laser beam to cut metal in a split second, you can imagine how much energy a 40-meter diameter magnetron will create that's made out of quartz. We can't even begin to imagine the amount of power these things used to generate and still generate today. Where that power is going, I don't know. But we know they're still generating it. The interesting thing is that we don't just have one of those giant magnetrons, we got thousands of them. So whatever these ancient cultures were doing, they were using a hell of a lot of energy. And it starts to point in the direction that it was not just to do with gold, but it was to do with terraforming, with creating an atmosphere, all kinds of things that we can't even imagine. We measured the sound frequencies, electromagnetic fields, and all kinds of other stuff in these stone circles, and they boggle the mind. You're not supposed to be measuring gigahertz of frequencies inside stone circles. It's very, very difficult to generate gigahertz of sound, gigahertz of energy. It's very difficult. Ask any scientist that works in that field. And yet, all these stone circles generate all the time. They never stop. Energies and sound frequencies in the gigahertz, from 14.5 gigahertz all the way up to beyond 30 and 40 gigahertz, like I indicate here. The sound, the decibels, the sound in decibels coming out of this particular run is beyond 30,000 decibels. If you know what decibels are, you understand what I'm telling you here. It's unimaginable for us to do that. And this is happening around us in millions of stone circles, creating unimaginable amounts of energy. Enki's calendar or Adam's calendar is unimaginable because the amount of frequency that comes out of there. As you walk, you can explain why the stone circles create the energy, because there's quartz in the stones. So it's the quartz that vibrates so fast so we can figure it out. But at Adam's calendar, there's no circle, there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of standing stones. And yet when you walk in there with a measuring device, literally you take one step forward and the thing goes crazy. Beyond 375 gigahertz of sound coming out of that site. And what's even more interesting, the electromagnetic fields associated with it run horizontally at about 1700 megahertz. And then inside the middle, between the two central calendar stones, the electromagnetic fields run vertically up into the sky. So we've got one of these, an active vortex portal that we can't imagine. We can't build one of those today unless you work for the Black Ops projects for the military. And this is what happens. So is it possible that we have one of these, a beam me up Scotty device, beam up the gold? Who knows? You reach your own conclusions. But what I can tell you is that, you know how they love to hide things in plain sight? Well, on the 1st of April, an article was posted that an army was successfully teleported from the USA to Germany. Well, I don't think it's a April Fool's prank, because they need to get that out into the mainstream, and this is how they do these things. And you realize that teleportation is nothing new. For those of you that study the alternative information and websites will know that this kind of technology has been developed a long time ago. And the Manhattan Project was just an example of that. And it brings us to the sacred stones, these mysterious donut-shaped stones that thousands of them exist around southern Africa. Now these are supposed to come out of the Stone Age time. They're supposed to be weights for digging sticks, and just another insanity that's been, promoted by our historians that just can't figure stuff out. God bless them for that, but this is a whole new way of understanding technology. When we put one of these into water, thousands of tiny bubbles formed and started spiraling around, going into the center of the stone. We started measuring very powerful energies around these stones that baffled me, and I started to realize that it's probably got something to do with SASER technology. Because in 2009 is the first time that we were introduced to SASER technology, taking sound and speeding it up through a cone that then projects out a SASER beam, not a laser beam, a SASER beam, sound amplified by stimulated emission of radiation. So it's the SASER technology that creates a vortex field. And what happens around a vortex field? It distorts gravity. This is well documented since the bloody 30s already, that vortex fields distort gravity. Now suddenly we're getting to understanding how cone-shaped tools can be used to levitate and manipulate matter, because they distort gravity and much, much more. And this is also, by the way, how bumblebees and dragonflies fly. They don't fly by flapping their wings. They fly with their wings are filled with tubes, hollow tubes. And sound, the sound of the frequency of the wings they make goes down their tubes. And guess what is scattered all along the little tubes along their wings? Thousands of tiny little cones that capture that sound frequency and project it in all directions, creating vortex fields coming out of the wings of the bumblebees and the dragonflies, creating a gravity-free zone around that insect. This is how these insects fly, using sound and resonance and cone-shaped tools built into their wings. Now try and explain this to an archaeologist or a historian about how ancients moved stuff around. This is why you need to realize that everything is connected. If you try and separate anything from anything else, you're promoting the agenda of those that have pushed us into the agenda, separating ourselves, separating us from each other, separating the subjects at school from each other, you know. You can't mix science with history or with religion, they're separate subjects. This is the part of the problem that we need to overcome. Everything is connected, and by studying this stuff you realize how quickly we can break through our blockage of knowledge. So I started realizing or figuring out that these Taurus stones may have been used as energy generators because they're vortex field generators, and possibly pushing the energy into the cones that then capture that energy, and it speeds up until it pushes it out as a SASER beam at the front. And these stones are very powerful toroid vortex generators, and this is one of them that I handed to Nassim Haramein in that particular stone there, which is now in a laboratory in Seattle being studied by a bunch of scientists, and we've made some amazing breakthrough. We've already trapped scalar waves coming out of the stones in ice. So we've already proven in our little group of scientists that these Taurus stones are actually very powerful energy generators. But this particular stone is a stone that crashed the TSA system at Doha International Airport and stopped the plane from taking off, and I had to go out and take that out of my bag, and men with guns were very confused. But it's a great story. I don't want to go into it, but if you watch any of my presentations, I'll tell the full version of the story. It crashed, listen carefully, that stone crashed the TSA security system. It shut down their computers. Okay. We have to thank Homeland Security for proving that stones are ancient advanced technology. And this is where we realize that the earth, the ancient sites on the earth are not just scattered all over the place randomly, and that they've put on very specific nodal points, cross lines of very powerful energy fields. And we actually get told in the Sumerian texts about this. That's what blows my mind. This particular clay tablet tells us that in the distant days, in those days, after destinies had been decreed, after An and Enlil had set up the regulations for heaven and earth. I mean, these dudes weren't playing around, okay? Enki, the exalted knowing God, by the rules for heaven and earth, the fixed rules, he set up cities. So he talks about rules, some sort of rules, heaven and earth, some sort of fixed energetic lines that they put the cities on. And you realize that these rules are actually encoded in modern military. David Wilcock actually broke this information several years ago when he referred to those white lines around the earth. They refer to them as the rules. They don't know where they come from, but they've always been there. Some sort of an energetic grid around the earth that is encoded in all the military and Air Force logos. And that's when I realized that that's exactly what all these ancient sites are. They're the generators of the energy that somehow keep these rules or this energy grid around the earth. Because it just doesn't make any sense. These advanced technology on a gigantic base. By the way, if you put your ear to this obelisk and you tap on it, it rings like a bell, like those stones of mine that I have in my museum. And if you look at these ancient structures, they're just too many pillars, not enough space. It's got nothing to do with offering food or worshipping the gods and so forth. That's just the distraction. It's when you start looking at it from aerial photographs that everything starts to fall into place. And you realize too many pillars, not enough space, and it goes to the Parthenon and all these ancient sites all over the world. They just don't make any sense, all connected together. These giant pillars on a big platform that just doesn't make any sense why they would build this. And you realize that these are not temples, but they're actually templates. And these are actually giant circuit boards made out of silica and quartz. And here's one of the best examples. giant energy circuits that were built to do something, to generate huge amounts of energy, and the obelisks were either pushing the energy up into the sky or sucking it from the sky to start these giant energy devices. At one of the talks that I did 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, at Contact in the Desert, after this, a guy came out and he stopped me and he said, "Hey, I designed circuit boards in Seattle, and this is exactly that's." And he started describing to me what these different parts of these circuit boards would do. And he said it seems that they had the same problem in ancient times to disperse the heat, just by looking at these. And it goes on and on. And there you go. There's a giant energy circuit. It just doesn't make any sense if you start thinking about this as a place of worship. Are you kidding me? Really? And suddenly microprocessors become gigantic processors over there, and you start seeing how blind we've been to the reality around us. It all starts to fall into place, and suddenly the pyramids make a lot more sense, and we start to understand this, and we realize that the rules, the energy grid around the earth is what's being held up by these structures. Whether you go from the Parthenon, which is completely destroyed, the structures around that resonating chamber that still remains have been destroyed. But what's important to note, it seems like human sound or human noise was used to start these things up, because they're all connected to these amphitheaters. And there's an amphitheater there, amphitheater here, they're all connected with these resonating pillars to each other, and then they plug into these giant circuit boards on top of a hill. Here's another one. There's your amphitheater connected with resonating pillars to the circuit board here that's now completely destroyed. Here's another amphitheater connected to the destroyed circuit board on top of the hill. It looks like they put people into the amphitheaters, they get them excited or get them scared or make them shout and sing, and the sound of the people activates those circuit boards. What's important to note that these amphitheaters are built absolutely precision acoustically. So they amplify the sound so incredibly that it works as an activator or resonator. Here's another one. This is in Algeria. There's a circuit board all around, and there's your amphitheater right in the middle of the circuit board, and it goes on and on and on. And if you think things have changed in the modern days, nothing has changed. The temples have just become churches with steeples, and the same thing goes on. And if you start looking at the towers of churches and mosques, they're nothing less or more than giant cones that take the sound and they focus it up into the metal rod that sticks out of the top of the church and the mosque. What I found fascinating driving through countries where there are lots of mosques, they have between 1 and 5 metal balls on top of these mosques that stick out. So it looks like they even choose what kind of frequency they put out into the sky. Like, you know, what kind of pulse rate they're putting out the sound or the SASER frequencies. It's just insane. And then obviously this is the big daddy of them all. And this capturing and sharing of sound. And there you can see the cross on the top, sound. Sound, the symbol for sound and the source of everything is the cross. Right at the top of the sound catcher, the giant bowl that catches the sound and the resonance. The symbols and the information is everywhere, people. And we realize that our business centers and cities are nothing less and nothing more than giant circuit boards today resonating with all the people and all the vibration and all these giant buildings, skyscrapers just vibrating. And here in London, you got a giant obelisk, which is, you know, if that's not enough of connecting us to the ancient stone structures. City grids are giant circuit boards all connected to each other like the stone circles in southern Africa, connected to each other with these channels, channeling energy, and all our modern cities are all connected to each other with channels that never stop making a noise. And the plot just thickens and you realize that nothing has changed. And suddenly Morpheus' statement becomes so much more relevant, that we are all energy for somebody that's using us as a source of energy. And this is the point where we realize that we need to figure out what we've learned from this. And it's at this point we're going to leap into this new age, this new reality of ours, this new plan of action, and realize that we have been enslaved on our planet, we live on our prison planet, we cannot move around freely, We cannot live where we choose to. We need passports and work permits. We have to follow rules and laws that we did not agree to. Not one of you agreed to the laws and the rules at birth that have been imposed on you. But at some stage of your life, you have to follow those rules, and if you don't, you go to jail. That's insane. We have to work to survive. We have to earn this thing called money, and if you don't pay the money, if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. This is not freedom. What is this called? It's called slavery. And that's why we're here today, to figure out how we're going to get ourselves out of this slavery. And this was just a quick high-speed moving through ancient origins, mysterious history, show us how little we know, and some of the manipulation and the tools and the methods that have been used to enslave us and to turn us into a species with amnesia so that we can be manipulated. But we have now woken up, and the rise of consciousness is affecting everyone. So let's take a break, go and do whatever you need to do, and come back in half an hour, and we'll continue with what we really came here for, is the Ubuntu contributionism discussion. Thank you very much.